everyone back to another episode of the Franchise Friday podcast. I am Melissa Pang here at the Entrepreneur Source, and I am very happy to be speaking with my guest, Adam Winnett from Wow One Day Painting, also a neighbor in Canada. Hey.
Correct. Yeah. Hey, north of the wall, north of the
How you
border,
doing,
whatever you
Adam?
want to say. I'm good. Yeah, I'm really good, and north of the wall, north of the border. Going to say A on this podcast, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah.
Just listen for it. It'll happen.
Our Canadian listeners will be very, very happy about that. Yeah. Good representation. So, all right, I'm excited about our conversation, which I truly am. We could talk for hours. Before we jump into anything, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your background. How did you get into franchising? How did you get to Wow One Day Painting? Give the people a little story.
Sure. So I've been with Wow for a little over 6 years now. And leading up to that, I was in, whatever term you want, recruiting, headhunting, that kind of world. And I was on the account management side for a long time. And O2E Brands, so this is the parent company of Wow One Day Painting, another brand, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and another brand, Jack Shine. So O2E Brands is based in Vancouver, where I'm based, and they became a client of mine. So for a couple of years, I was helping O2E recruit people for their head office. And this was, I guess, really the first kind of taste of franchising, of just what is that world, what's going on in it, and trying to help, talk to my clients about what their business was, obviously, right? And it was something where I was very familiar with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Brian Scudamore, that story, not only just in Vancouver, but he's obviously very, very popular there, but his story is pretty well known. He's done a lot of media stuff. And so as I worked with them and brought them clients, I got the same reaction every time. Sometimes people got the job, sometimes they didn't, but the reaction every time was like, I want to work there. Well, what is that? How do I get in? I don't know if I was right for that job, but like there's a culture thing there that is different than anywhere else. There's something they're doing that's really, really neat and really interesting. So that just stuck with me. And I'd hit a point in my career, it was kind of 9-10 years of doing that, where I wanted to change and do something different and, not totally reinvent my life, but kind of do something that was a bit different. And so I actually just approached O2E Brands and just said, hey, I don't know what I would do for you. I know you have a recruitment team, whatever. I don't exactly want to do that. So I don't know what else is out there, but this is a place I'd like to work. I've just heard such amazing things. And they said, well, we have this thing called franchise development. And actually, you might be kind of a natural at that. So that started the conversation. Wow One Day Painting at the time was looking to bring someone into that role. And I think about 11 interviews later, they really take their time on the fit and culture and everything else. I started. And I'd had like a little small taste of some of the college painting stuff back in the day, but was no means that was my world, and learned quickly didn't need to be. And really quickly just got into franchising and what that was all about and small business ownership. And it hooked me pretty quick.
I love the story, and also just the fact that I think this happens to a lot of people in franchising, but you kind of just fall into it naturally. Like somehow the stars align and you find it, because it's nothing that's really talked about in school. It's nothing that's talked about in college, and you would never think of O2E Brands or Wow One Day as like, wow, franchising and an industry I'd really like to get into.
Yeah, totally. And the other side that ended up, I guess, kind of working out, but again, to your point, I'd never thought about it, was my father-in-law was a franchise owner in a food business. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things, like I knew that, but I hadn't really thought of it in any way. And in my brain before O2E Brands, like food was kind of the only franchising thing I had thought of. So when I was, interviewing with them, thinking of the job, I asked him and just said, like, how was this on your life? I can kind of see the long-term impact, but just talk to me about what that did for him, as a young guy, because he was in it for a long time. And he just really spoke about, he never would have been able to do a business on his own. He just didn't have the background, the education, the confidence, or whatever. And he just talked about how, really franchising had changed his life and his kids' lives and his wife's life and just the whole thing. And so that was also a boost for me to look at that and say, okay, there's something amazing we can do if the right franchisor and right franchisee come together. You can change lives. That was cool.
And I know you guys do that very much at Wow One Day and O2E. And I've always been intrigued by O2E and the culture, like you mentioned. It's just I don't think I've ever really seen it anywhere else. So that's also fascinating. And we can get into that kind of on the franchisee side, like what
Sure.
brings them in. I'm assuming culture is a big piece of that. But before we get
Yeah.
into that side of it, you came into WoW one day kind of at the beginning, if I remember correctly, when there weren't a lot of franchisees and it was an emerging brand in the space, and you've grown quite a lot over the past 6 years. So, can you share a little bit of what that looked like, and also maybe just share what are three things that over your 6+ years with Wow One Day, seeing them grow, what are three things that you would say to an emerging brand or someone else in that space that are like really kind of key, either aha moments or things you saw that
Mm.
were done really well or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and certainly I'll try to pass on some wisdom. How much of that's real, I don't know. We'll find out here in a second.
We'll take
But
it.
yeah. So I think when I came into WoW, there was certainly like a baseline that had been set, and there were some franchisees, and like you said, it was emerging and growing. But I would say still very much sort of figuring it out in a way of not what is the model, but who is exactly the right fit in the model, how we best support them, and just what does that look like? What is really the ingredient to success? And of course, anyone who's looking at franchising or is in franchising knows there's not one, but you certainly can try to get a tighter vision of what that is. And so I think that's been one of the biggest takeaways for me in the last 6 years is just really understanding what does success look like? What can this business, to your point earlier, what can this business do for someone's life, and who's the right person to come in and then be able to access that, right? And really benefit from that and be successful with that. And what does our model look like that works? Or how could our model really be challenging or struggling for someone if it's the wrong fit? And, it really comes down to Brian Scudamore. So again, the founder of all of our brands, the owner of all of our brands. The way he built 1-800-GOT-JUNK was just being very focused on helping the right people get in our system. So just because someone wants in and just because they have some money doesn't mean you should bring them into your system. Doesn't mean you should just say, sure, go ahead. You should really help them understand, is this the right fit and why? And for you as a brand to really understand, are they the right fit and why? And so, when you look at the three things that you said, the first one for me would be the culture of your owners is massive. WoW is extremely lucky, I would say, and I hear this all the time from people that are exploring our brand that are often looking at other companies, other brands, is that the culture of owners we have, how often they speak, how close they are with each other across the country, how often they help each other, just the relationship that a lot of them, it's their best friends now. And they vacation together and their kids know each other. And they're not even necessarily sometimes in the same country or the same state or anything like that. But we have this really, really close, group that they're also protective. So they look to me to go, Adam, we don't want you just bringing anybody. We want people that really care about the brand and want to be a part of this thing. And we're going to, kind of lift the tide together. And again, that's what we did with 1-800-GOT-JUNK to make it the biggest junk removal company in the world. And so WoW is on that same trajectory of just, I would say to emerging brands, yes, it's easy sometimes just go anybody that wants in, do that. Sure, that could be a strategy. But I think there's a lot of risk and you may find some challenges with that long term. But I hear this all the time from people that are speaking to our owners at some point, and they're speaking to other franchises owners, and they're going like, this is not the same. I'm not hearing the same thing from your owners. I'm not getting the same feedback. It's totally different with WoW. And to you brought this up earlier, the culture does draw them in. So yeah, that culture side would be certainly my number one is I would say pay attention to that and be very clear on what your culture is as a brand and who fits that and who maybe doesn't, even if, on paper they seem amazing. If your gut's telling you something as a franchisor, then probably listen to that too. A second thing I would say, kind of building off that is listen to your franchisors or listen to your franchisees, excuse me. So how we've built this brand, since I've been there in 6 years, but I would say even before that in the last 10 years is it's not a one-way conversation. It's not just us going to our owners and saying, here's how you do everything. Here's every change we're making. Here's every new marketing thing or technology thing or whatever. And we don't care what you think or we don't care what your feedback is. Some of our best ideas have come from our owners. So just having a very clear way of dialogue, checking in with owners. Maybe it's, some people have a franchise advisory council or they call it something similar. But something like that, I think is super essential to building a brand that your owners believe in having systems that really support their needs, not what you think their needs are. Of course, as a franchisor, you have to have some stuff where you're like, this is how we're doing this, or this is what the brand is. But if it's only a one-way conversation, you kind of think back to, a relationship you might have been in, or school, or anything, where if it's always one way, the other side kind of checks out eventually. But if it's both sides feeling like they're respected and listened to, that's again where I think you build some magic. So I would say that again for emerging brands, just have a way to have a dialogue.
Love that. And if you have one more, that's fine. If you don't feel any pressure to have three, because these are great ones. I think you bring up a great point on the culture piece, just going back to your first point of, especially as a new brand, new franchise brand, or emerging in the space, it is that kind of rush or pressure that you feel to bring on all these franchisees because, hey, now we're a franchise, let's just grow. And you forget to look long-term.
Yeah.
And really look out, or really take time in the beginning to like sit down with the team, sit down with the people who are really there at the beginning and say, okay, like who are we looking for? And like, who do I want to still be working with in 10 years or 20 years? And that's a big deal. And I also love that the franchisees are like, Adam, we need you to bring in the right people because we love our family and we don't bring in the in-law that no one wants.
Yes.
No?
Yes. Yeah. No, they care. And it's great. Like I love it because once in a while I'll get that message of like, hey, I got some questions on this person that you introduced us to at validation. And that's a immediate pick up the phone with me and go, tell me about that. Right. And I want to know about that. And maybe you heard something I didn't. So yeah, we really value that. I'll give you a third. I think the third for me would be the more clear you are in what you do as a business and who your brand is, I think the better, and almost more the simpler, the better. That there can be a draw to go, well, what if we also did this? And what if we also did this? Or what if we also added this? Or, well, they're doing that, so we should also do that. Or they say this, we should also say that. And then your message gets muddled and your service or your product or whatever it is you do as a company gets muddled. And that will impact, the customer base you have of what is this? Or what do they do? It impacts your owners kind of knowing what do they do. And it can be distracting. They sort of say that, right? If you're trying to do too many things at once, you're going to be kind of average or poor at all of them. But the tighter and more focused you are, the better. And I think, again, as an emerging brand, you see other brands that might look similar or just people that are successful, other companies and brands. And there can be that instinct to go like, let's try to copy that or use that or do that. But if that's not your brand, if that's not your company, you actually might be creating a headache for yourself that you didn't have to begin with.
Yeah, shiny object syndrome can come into play at any point.
Yes.
But stay focused, especially in the beginning and that also dictates like, okay, who are we trying to bring in? Like it just kind of brings the focus in on who are we? What's our vision? And these are, in one sense, basic things that you're looking at. But I do think that it gets lost when you're kind of in that growth phase or all right, we got to start bringing in franchisees now and building the system. I do think that these things get lost and they're just so wildly important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting kind of going back to framework. Like what is your baseline? What is everything else going to be built upon? And again, if that's not done well or not done correctly, kind of like if you're building a house, at some point it's going to start to crumble or the cracks are going to show or there's going to be water damage or whatever. Like it's really important to set the ground level and build up. And there's obviously a need or feel sometimes to be rushed and go as fast as you can or as big as you can, as quickly as you can, but probably not always the best way to grow. Just depends for everybody, but just being very, very clear on what your ground is because everything is built upon that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you touched on this a little bit with, I think culture is really the shining star of the story when it comes to O2E brands and Wow One Day. I also see that a lot of the TES clients who are working with coaches and our franchisor members, they're actually not really, it doesn't matter so much to them what is the business. Like, great, it's painting, great, it's pizza, great, it's a handyman concept. It's actually really not so much about that. It's really about, can I see myself here? What do I love about it? Is this a community that I can grow in and I get the support that I need? So from the Wow One Day side of it, what are some of those things that franchisees love or that really draws someone to the brand that maybe either people wouldn't think of up front and outside of that culture piece? Because I think that's like such a big deal.
Yeah. And as you said, like that's probably not something a lot of people think about when they're thinking about their own business. Like maybe if you're looking at a job, you think about culture of the company, but in a franchise, your own business is also still a part of a culture, right? So I'd encourage anybody looking at a franchise is, get to know the culture of that franchise or the other franchisees. And is that something you want to be a part of or not? Because you're going to be ideally with that group for a long time, that company for a long time. Yeah, I think, some things that draw people to Wow One Day Painting, there's a few for sure that are fairly consistent. One of them is not a love of painting. So I always talk about that with people like, I don't know, I wouldn't have thought of this because I don't love painting. I'm like, that's the first thing I'm excited that you said to me. Yeah, I don't want you to be obsessed with painting and all want to do is just go and pick up a paintbrush. Like, that's not this, right? We're looking for people that are excited to build and scale large home service businesses. In this case, it's painting. But I don't want you to be thinking all day and all night about painting a wall. So I think the first thing that is certainly a connector for all of our owners is what Wow One Day Painting does extremely well and how we are very, very, very different, I feel like, than anyone else in this space, whether they're a painting franchise or just a painter down your block, is we are exceptional at customer experience. And this is a customer experience company. We just happen to paint. There's other painting businesses out there or franchises or whatever, and they're focused on being good painting businesses, and that's a totally fine lane to be in. But again, I look at all of the O2 Brands companies, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Wow One Day Painting, and Shack Shine. These are all very, very focused customer experience businesses. And that is what our owners are passionate about. They want something that they're known as like the mayor of their area. People are like, you're the one who owns that business. That's incredible. Like I've heard about what you guys do. I've heard how you do it and this one day painting experience and how easy it was and professional. And I've told everybody about it, or I have to use you. That's what gets our owners excited, is having that kind of service that their community loves and people rave about. And they see, and we just had a rookie of the year last year. So he's in his second year. He just crossed 100 5-star reviews already. That's what gets him excited. No interest in painting, but he's like, I love that everyone around me is like, you're the guy. And I love your business and I love what you've done for my life. And so that gets them really, really excited. And then the trickle down from that is our owners generally love dealing with people. They want to have customer interactions. They want to build relationships with other people in their community that deal in our space, like realtors and contractors and different people like that. And they also want to have teams of people. They're excited about helping people grow a career, grow jobs, provide for their families, working for them. That gets them really excited. And with a business, you have tremendous opportunity to do that. And it's so cool now. We have these owners that have been around for 6, 7, 8, 9, plus years, and they've had people with them that whole time. Wow. And someone that might have been a painter is now their general manager, or someone is leading their sales team and they came on as a painter. And like that gets them so excited to go, I've helped change someone else's life. My life has changed, but someone else's life has changed. So, those kind of things around what we do and how we do it. And I'd say the third thing is it's a business where you can really enjoy the lifestyle of a business that gets bigger, but it gets bigger through people. So as you get bigger, you can actually kind of do less, which is not a lot of things. A lot of things you want to get bigger, you got to do more and you're going to be busier. And where in this case, you build people up to take over the things you were doing. And you really can enjoy a business where there's not a location you have to be at every day. There's not these core hours where you're stuck physically at this place. You can put people into place to do the things you were doing. And then you're really more about the strategic and leadership side of it. And it's amazing when our owners are, tuning into a system-wide meeting from their cabin 3 days a week. And they're like, I kind of do 2 days a week in my area, but I've got this $1 million+ $2 million business running. But I've built it that way to really enjoy the lifestyle. And that's a huge thing that people want to have a different way of living. And they're not as tied to their success via physically being there as maybe they needed to be with a job. So those are some, consistent things when I look across the 70 odd owners, like you ask them, like these are very, very consistent things that get them excited.
And this is why I believe that between Wow One Day and the Entrepreneur Source, there is such great alignment because, and I talk about this probably every single day and people hate hearing about it at this point, but it's income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. And I talk about that all the time because we hear so much about, okay, start with why, people's why, what are your goals? And we've broken that into income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. Like what's your why for each of these 4 things? And you talking about this is you're meeting people's ILWI, you're meeting their income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals on a number of different levels. And we do see it as like, okay, you start with the income, build the income so you can have the lifestyle. With that lifestyle, you then are able to start building wealth, and that leads to equity for, the incoming generation. But someone really could like look at, let's say, Wow One Day painting, and I think you guys do a great job of that and telling your story of I want that lifestyle. Wow One Day can give that to me. How do I get there now? And then they back into that. But I feel like you guys tell that story really well.
Yeah, I'll go two very quick stories on an owner of ours that he's got two cool stories connected to him. He's been around for a while now and he's running a multi-million-dollar business in Minneapolis. His name's Mike. But so two fun stories is we had an owner join us several years after Mike, and I was working with them and they were exploring the brand, and they were like, hey, we have to go away this weekend. We'll talk to you next week. We've got a family thing and it's in Minneapolis. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, we have a couple franchises there. Anyway, so they come back and they're like, so we went to the state fair. It was held in Minneapolis. And everywhere we went, we saw WOW stuff. And people were talking about this WOW business and this guy, Mike. Like, it's like he ran Minneapolis and everyone loved him. And everyone talked about how good he took care of them. And this experience and like dealing with, normally dealing with contractors and tradespeople is the worst. And dealing with Mike is the best. And like, we just came back and they're like, we're in. Like, how do we do this? We want to be Mike. I want that reputation that everyone knows who I am and everyone loves what I do. I was like, you're not even in his city. Like, they're from a different state. But they just happen to be there. And anyway, it was very, very cool. And they ended up being franchise owners. And then another cool thing with Mike is when he got involved with WOW, one of his long-term goals was he really wanted to have a vacation property for his family. He's like, I want a cabin on a lake. I've always told my wife I'm going to do that for her. The job's not letting me do that. And then I want to enjoy it more. Like, can I do this and how do I do this? And so over the years, Mike built a plan on how to get there. Several years ago, he bought his dream cabin. It's right on the lake. It's 4 families. And the next summer, his daughter asked if she could get married there. And for him, he's like, I'm good. Like, that's it. Like, all of this stuff, the hard days, the frustrating days, like the exciting days, all of it came together for these things. And that's why, at the start of the call, we talked about changing lives. Like for Mike, it's like, this changed my life. That's incredible. And I would never have done this in the job I had. So those are the things we want more and more of. And like you said, tell those stories and then along the way, change some customers' lives and you make their lives a lot easier with this amazing service.
I live for these stories. and the reason that I do too is because like when you mentioned in the beginning where your father-in-law had the franchise, but in the food industry, and you kind of think, okay, that's all it is. And you look at these different franchises that are really well known and you think, okay, very corporate, big business, and they're in my town taking over. But you look at franchising through a different lens, and it's like, yes, the changing people's lives, giving people opportunity to accomplish things they would never have been able to do. And it's like, okay, how do we talk more about that so people can, and it's not for everyone. It's not saying, franchising, just like spread it out across. Let's do that.
Yeah, but, spread the message, but it's not for everybody. Yeah,
it's not for everyone, but you can see how, and again, your brand being that vehicle, like without Wow One Day, Mike would not have been able to do that. And he was able to see himself accomplishing these things through your business. And also I would assume that, like you said, got him through the hard days. So he's not just like, I have to work for a paycheck. He's like, I'm working for something more.
Yeah. The why. The why, as you said. You have those whys. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think you're right. Like franchising is not a guaranteed success. It's not a light switch that just happens. It's not for everybody. But it is a thing that is probably misunderstood more than other things. And to your point, like franchising at its core is just a massive group of small business owners. Yeah. So you may have franchises in your area. You might go, oh, this big label, this big thing. But it's individual people who have gone all in on something, trying to change their life and run their own small business and make an income and provide for their families. So, again, different lens of like supporting franchises and franchise businesses in your area. You're actually just supporting small business owners and what they're trying to do with their life and the gamble they took on themselves. And it's really, really cool.
I know now. And I saw that change in myself. Like I used to see, okay, like franchises, whatever. Now when I see a franchise, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going in there. Send me Mike's number. I'm not even in Minneapolis, so whatever. But there's a Wow One Day in Connecticut. It's there like you want to support them. And a lot of time people don't realize, no, it's an individual. Like they become the mayor of their community. They're the people you see at the school, at the daycare, at the grocery store. Like they're changing lives there. So getting into like now the relationship between the Entrepreneur Source and Wow One Day, see the values and how we work together align. And that doesn't, again, like franchising isn't for everyone. The entrepreneur source isn't for everyone either.
Sure.
And so can you just give a little, just what your experience has been, or, how you work with the coaches and the clients and what that looks like and how that fits in with Wow One Day's not only like growth strategy, but also just your own values and the way that your brand operates.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think, like you're saying, in a lot of industries, there's a wide variety of a way that people do things, right? And some people are doing it in a way that's maybe a bit more well-rounded, and other people do things that are very transactional. And there's a whole bunch of things in industries that falls under for sure. But I would say certainly the focus of the entrepreneur source, both from yourself, Melissa, like the support team that we work with, but also just some of your more and most experienced coaches who are helping that culture. There's really a desire both to understand your clients, not just, hey, you're interested in a business and you've got some money, let me just fire you off to a bunch of franchises and kind of close my eyes and cross my fingers and hope it works. But just even the process of talking to clients for weeks, maybe even months if they need that, before they even talk to us. So that there's really this well-roundedness of understanding what's important to the clients that your coaches are working with. What are those whys, those needs? And then trying to align them with the right brands to make that connection happen. And then on the flip side, it's, trying to understand us and who are we looking for and what is the culture at Wow like or any other brand. And so that they can really try to make those connections. And of course, none of us are perfect. It doesn't work every time, but there's certainly more of an opportunity, I think, when we have alignment around that you can see that happen. And as I said, it's not just, hey, I talked to you once, here's some franchises, I hope it works out. And so then having an ongoing dynamic too. Like I was just talking to one of your coaches yesterday, and I think she and I have spoken every day for 2 months straight. And she's got a client. He's in a difficult position. We're trying to help him pivot. His life is like, there's a lot going on with him. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But if she and I weren't talking every day and then talking to him, and like, it's really three of us trying to help this guy navigate, this would have been like, he would have given up 2 months ago. Yeah. There's just some roadblocks and some changes. And so, yeah, it's just essential to have that kind of attitude that we both have, which is this is a human and a person, and they're potentially going all in on something that's very, very significant to their life. How do we help them? And ultimately, if this is not the right thing for them, that's also okay. Right? That's also okay. We're not just going to put someone into a spot that we see as a bad fit. But if we do see it as a good fit, how do we help that person? How do we collaborate together? And that doesn't happen everywhere. I can certainly speak to that.
And this is why, and I know people are like, hey, Melissa, this is like a plug for the entrepreneur source, which yes, it is. No, okay. But it really isn't, because I want to highlight the fact that this is what I look at as an awesome partnership. And this is like the relationship that we're looking for within franchising as well. So it's not just that transactional piece that you do and we're, just the outcome for you, the outcome for the coach is what's at stake here.
Sure.
But really it's like the client focus. And two, I want to also highlight the fact that you, Wow One Day, and you individually are so great at creating the collaboration and the client as the focus. That's where that does align with us so well. And I think that is vital and can sometimes get lost as well. Like, there is time invested every day for 2 months. A lot of people would have given up, on the whole situation, just written it off, but you never know. And so that's like a massive kudos to you and the coach and the client. But because you create that relationship, you're able to do that.
Yeah, I think like trust is a word that I know you guys use a lot and we use a lot, and having trust with each other, right? If a client, if a coach is bringing me their client and I'm going to interact with their client, I want to trust that the coach has done their part in really figuring out why I'm going to talk to this person, that we could be a potential good fit. And they really want to trust that they're in good hands with me exploring Wow One Day painting. As I said, whether it works out or not, because it doesn't a lot of the time. Sometimes they figure that out in the process, and that's okay. That's what the process is there for. But trust is a big one, because everyone's being a little bit vulnerable with each other, which is big. And I look at the entrepreneur source, and for me, two massive things of trust are, and I think you know this because we've talked about this, but one of your coaches, his son is one of our owners. So he brought his own son. Okay. All right. So, and that was probably about a year and a half ago. And so one of his sons is one of our owners, which is amazing. And then two of your coaches who are married, and you'll know this one because we was just at the conference, but their nephew is one of our owners. So again, they brought their family to us. And so for both these people, like, that's a big trust one, right? Where you're going, here's our nephew. Like, we trust you're going to look after him and his family, and this could be a great fit. Here's someone else going, here's my son, and I think this could be a thing, and I trust you. And just being at the conference, a couple weeks ago, getting to talk to them, and they keep in regular contact with their family, obviously. So, but that's amazing. Like, there's no bigger trust than your family, right? So if you're willing to trust us with your family members to be owners, for me, I look at that and go, like, how special and how amazing. So, yeah, trust is a big one.
That is huge. And love that. I don't think I realized, the first one. So, and again, it speaks a lot to the company that Wow One Day and O2E brands, the culture and the family and the brand that you guys are and have built. And that is who we love working with. So I have to say thank you. And again, big kudos to you guys as well.
I love it. Those are the fun stories.
Those are good ones. And so to wrap it up here, again, you and I could talk for hours, but when you look over the horizon, what does future of franchising mean to you?
It's it's interesting because in some ways today, and I don't know, how this comment will age, but it feels like a bit of uncertainty in the world.
Yep.
Right? Like there's interest rate conversations and debt and all sorts of stuff going on, right? So a lot of people feel uncertain, and we've just come out of a pandemic and all this. But, I look back at the last few years and the amount of people I've spoken with that are really looking at their life and what are they doing with their life? What does wealth mean? What does lifestyle mean? What does equity mean? What does their future mean? And more than ever, I've heard people question that and question corporate America and question the security of a job or their happiness in their job, or all these different things, right? And what does their legacy mean? So when I look at the future of franchising, I just think it's going to be more and more people being open to exploring what that possibility could be. And as you said, not just thinking food, just how many different options there are. There's obviously a ton of really good franchises out there. There's some that are probably not on that list, but there's majority, I think, are doing it the right way and are truly trying to help people go after their dream of business ownership. And for me, the future of franchising is it's going to feel more attainable to more people that are ready to do that want to do that. And with more people probably questioning, what am I doing with my life? What's important to me? And I only have one life to live. They want to be passionate about what they're doing day to day. They want to provide something long-term for their family or the next generation or whatever it may be. And I think just more and more people may see franchising as that avenue. And that's really exciting because we're going to keep working on building our systems better, our brands better. Our customers not going anywhere. Painting is certainly not going anywhere. So there's just more and more opportunity to give people that path and that dream that they want to go after. And we want to be there to help.
It's an exciting time to be in franchising. And I really do mean that. And like we said in the beginning, the more we can spread the word about franchising, I think the better. And the stories around it. So people see it as it's people who are making up all of these things, like franchising. It's people, not like corporate.
Yeah. Individual owners, individual people, could be your neighbor, could be someone you grew up with. And that's really, really cool.
I love it. Well, Adam Winnett from Canada, thank you so much. Thank you so much for chatting with me today on the All Franchise Friday podcast.
Love being a Friday podcast guest, and I'll talk to you anytime.